doing? Um, Off-season time. Super Bowl's over. Hope you guys enjoyed the Super Bowl. It was a fun one. It's cool to see those Philly fans, go crazy after that Super Bowl. So, all things Tennessee Titans this off season, we'll be keeping up with the team. So, there's no true off season. I always laugh when people ask me, "What do you do in the off season?" Talk more football. It doesn't stop. So, wanted to talk to you guys as we go into this next session of the off season. The Tennessee Titans obviously are going to have a lot going on with the draft, the combine, and the next stages of their off season. But today we had the coordinators and their assistants talk for the first time. We finally got a chance to meet Matt LaFleur, Dean Pease, and all of their assistants. And I think that it was a good chance to really get a vibe of what they're about, particularly with Matt LaFleur. Dean Pease talked about his brief retirement and then coming out of it. And we really were able to get a lot of information on coaches that could help us with stuff throughout the offseason. So we'll see different stories. You'll see different stories from me over the next few weeks based on stuff that I gathered today and throughout. So look for a story coming up probably in about 15, 20 minutes on Dean Pease, the Titans defensive coordinator. I thought it was intriguing to hear him talk about why he decided to come outside of retirement. He was a guy who was the Ravens defensive coordinator for the last 6 years, and he's been with the team for the last 8 seasons. But he decided to retire, and then he came out of retirement after 4 weeks to join the Titans. So that will detail his reasons of why he decided to do this. There's also some interesting tidbits about his son joining the staff and a little bit of nepotism there, and what that means and his reasoning for why he said that's not the reason he took the job. So that should be all stuff that you guys want to check out if you're interested in that. So that'll be coming up on ESPN, and I also will have a story on Matt LaFleur that will run tomorrow morning. So kind of preview that for you guys. He talked about his plans for Marcus Mariota, and I'll tell you what, Titans fans, you probably should be excited about what he has to say. So I'll give you a little sneak peek as you guys asked in this Howling with the Wolf session, but also check out that story tomorrow, and you'll get a full breakdown of some of his early plans to unleash Marcus Mariota and what he saw in the Super Bowl from Philadelphia and how that could be some of the things that are implemented here in Tennessee next season. So those are two things to look out for from me this week. And as always, you guys fire away on questions, and we'll go ahead and attack those. I'll talk to you guys what I know, my initial impressions on the coaches, and then we'll kind of get into some of the off-season sort of speculation at this point and what's next for the Titans. So, Eddie, yeah, Josh McDaniels, obviously that was the big story of the night, last night and today, seeing him leave the organization, basically, the Indianapolis organization, and leave them hanging. And I don't know if I've seen anything like that before. I know that Bill Belichick probably did something similar when he stayed for one day with the Jets and then left off. But this one was really surprising to me. I think the Colts thought they had their guy for a couple of weeks, and he just bounced, and I think it's really going to be tough for him to find another head coach job outside of New England. So I don't know what details were with that, but hopefully he got some type of assurance from New England that he's the guy once Belichick's done. So I just don't think that's how you should go about things, particularly leaving the assistant coaches that already signed out to dry a bit. So yeah, Alden, I did ask. I did notice that. I thought that he was actually better than he has been, believe it or not. I know some people talked about LaFleur being boring on his press conference, and some of you guys watched the video. He's not a natural public speaker. You watch some of his videos, if you did, from the Rams. He's a little uncomfortable, or he hasn't been in that situation enough to develop comfort to speaking with the media and developing that sort of charisma that you hope to get from a head coach or something of that element. So I don't think that's a huge knock against him. I think that's something that he'll develop over time as he gets more comfortable with it. As you know, an offensive coordinator, you're going to be speaking every week. So he'll get used to it. He'll get more reps. He only had 1 year of it in with the Rams. So I think he'll get more comfortable with us and speaking in general. There's some guys who are better speaking one-on-one. There's some guys who can sell a room um, immediately. So um, it's just other guys' personalities. And I noted that during the head coaching search. And once they hired him, that he's a very different personality than Mike Vrabel. So if you're expecting a wow like Mike Vrabel may have gave some folks, then you may be some disappointed. But I don't think that takes away from his ability to be a strong offensive coordinator, so to speak. So that's my take on that. Lewis, do you feel O'Hare and LaFleur will bump heads about quarterback philosophy? No, I don't. I talked to Pat O'Hare for about 3 or 4 minutes today. Sort of one-on-one, and kind of got an idea of what he thinks about the quarterback position. He has a really interesting story, and I hope to share that with you guys as we go through the offseason. He's a guy who spent 16 years as a Arena Football League quarterback. He coached in the Arena Football League. He's worked as a Hollywood coach coordinator. He's worked with The Rock, with Adam Sandler, basically teaching them how to be or assimilate real football players. So he's had a lot of different variety of coaching experience. He spent time in Houston working with Sean Watson, and I asked him about that. And he talked about him and Matt LaFleur coming together and putting some of their heads together to figure out what's the best scheme for Marcus Mariota. And I think that's what impressed me most about Matt LaFleur speaking, and even Pat O'Hare, them talking about players over scheme and comfort. That was a buzzword all day for Matt LaFleur and really all of the offensive coaches. What can we do to make our players more comfortable? What can we do to make our players feel like this scheme is their scheme and not something they're forced into? And that was probably one of Mike Mularkey and the previous staff's biggest, flaws. They were, this is our scheme and we're going to run it. And, we're going to find guys to do how they fit in the scheme. So I don't think that's how you go about things this day and age. And it was refreshing to hear Matt LaFleur talk in depth about aggression, asking Mariota what he feels comfortable doing, and enticing him and maybe pressuring him to be more vocal in what he likes and what he doesn't like. And that's one thing as far as Marcus Mariota that you guys may have noticed. He's not a guy who's going to input his opinion over the coach's opinion too often. He's often going to go with the flow. He's often not going to ruffle feathers. And LaFleur kind of talked today about making sure that he gets out of that. Get out of your comfort zone a little bit. Tell me that you don't like this screen call on 2nd and 8. Tell me that you want to get more mobility outside of the pocket. Tell me you want less bunch routes and more 3-receiver spread routes. Tell me those things. And he talked about Jared Goff early on being a little hesitant to tell him those things. But by the end of the year, Jared Goff was saying, okay, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. And I think that if you get that out of Marcus Mariota, you had him in a system where he doesn't look skittish back there and he can look more confident and flowing in the offense. And I think that's where you can get the most productive performance out of him as a quarterback. So I'm intrigued to see how that all looks like. But I think those were positive things that we heard from Matt LaFleur today in those regards. Eddie said, could we see a similar use of Henry like they used Gurley? Henry showed he's pretty dangerous in the open field like Gurley. Yeah, Gurley was a big reason why the Rams offense went from worst to first in scoring. And I thought it was interesting that they used a lot of screens with Gurley. But they also used him as a receiver, split out wide. They knew that he was their best weapon, and they often dictated him to the defensive scheme. They tried to force mismatches on the defenses. And, you'll hear this phrase a lot. It's sort of a college phrase, but cause conflict. You have to figure out what can I do as far as an offensive scheme to make the defense feel uncomfortable, to cause conflict for them. And if you have a player like Todd Gurley on a linebacker, they're going to win those matchups all the time. The thing with Henry that we have to still see is whether or not he's going to be able to have that same receiving ability and a full-time role that Ty Gurley has, or even DeMarco Murray had in 2016. we're not sure about that. And obviously, his pass blocking ability is something that he struggled with in his time in Tennessee as well. So those are two elements that are going to decide whether or not the Titans need to bring in another back, whether it's DeMarco Murray getting a pay cut and staying, or bringing in another back to be more of that receiving back to complement Derrick Henry on those passing game reps. So I think that's one of the storylines I'm hopeful to see is that do the Titans trust Derrick Henry to be their 3-down running back and to do all the receiving things that are required, likely required in the Matt LaFleur offense, or do they feel like they need to get another more versatile and dynamic back to fill some of those receiving roles? So we'll learn that shortly. We'll probably learn next month whether DeMarco Murray is a part of this team or not. And then within the next month or two, we'll determine if the Titans go out in the free agent market or the trade market or the draft and find them another running back to challenge or complement Derrick Henry. So that's my take on that. And Corey's asking, LaFleur seemed decided to be the guy when it comes to play calling. Do you think he'll have a slow transition to his aggressive takes? But do you think we'll see it out of the gate come September? I mean, I won't know until we see. I'd love to make predictions. But the thing that I do want to be, cautious about is this is a first-time play caller. He called plays in 2 games, from what I understand, 2 preseason games, from what I understand, in LA. But overall, it was Sean McVay calling the plays. So he will have some of his ups and downs as a play caller, and you'll have to be prepared for those. Hopefully, as a Titans fan, you would hope that everything becomes really fluid. All the guys understand the scheme, and they're really strong in it in year one. But there's a decent chance that there are some struggles as far as the players getting exactly what they're supposed to be and where they're supposed to be. And then LaFleur just simply growing pains as a play caller. You got to realize, sort of balance things. How often should I pass? How often should I run? What's good in these situations? It's a 3rd and 8 at midfield. This is a situation that I should target the tight end like Delaney Walker on a play action pass, or should I do a bunch formation and target Corey Davis on the drag across the field? These are questions that he'll have to learn through experience. So I think that he's a guy who is very open to change, very open to versatility, and very open to innovation. And I think those are 3 elements that will be important for the Titans. And if we can see some of those things in 2018, then I think that's a step in the right direction, whether they're growing pains or not. So Wesley saying the biggest thing that I've noticed from these group of coaches hired is that they have a lot of character and passion for the sport, more so than others I've seen in the past. Who have you spoken to on this new staff that jumps out as a wow hire that you're excited to hear and see more of? By the way, phenomenal job and enjoy. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. As always, try to give you guys a little bit of an inside take with these Howling with the Wolfe chats. Something that maybe I don't cover in a story or whatnot. But good question. I talked to just about all of the position coaches and coordinators today, and the 2 that really stood out to me was one, Kerry Coombs, the defensive backs coach, and I'm often drawn to personality, and he has a very aggressive personality. Not aggressive as in out there, but aggressive as in he's trying to sell me. I felt like he was coaching me. He's a very enthusiastic guy. He's a guy who is going to be full of energy from what I saw. And he's a guy who has really got a lot of respect throughout the college realm for developing cornerbacks. And I know that was one reason they chose to keep Deshae Townsend, or keep him over Deshae Townsend, a guy who actually did pretty well, in my opinion, with the Titans defensive backs. But they thought that Kerry Coombs was going to be able to get more out of their cornerbacks, and particularly a guy like an Adoree Jackson, who is a 1st-round pick, who they hope develops into an elite cornerback. A guy like LaShawn Sims, who is probably going to be a 3rd or 4th cornerback. Can he continue that development? Those are things that they think that Kerry Coombs can do. And he's a guy who's a college guy. So he's the college scheme, for all its worth, is really good at developing players because they're able to spend more time with players and they connect with them a lot more on a one-to-one level, whereas the NFL, because of some of the rules, there's not a lot of time to teach players. So I think the one thing that I sort of learned today about this coaching staff is that Mike Vrabel will hire a lot of teachers, guys that may not yell at guys. It may not be a lot of, FUs and, get your butt out there and do this, and if that's what you want, then you might get that from Vrabel. You might get that from Vrabel, but you might not get that from a lot of the other guys on the staff. Those are guys who may sit down with Corey Davis and say, hey, this route's supposed to be at 9 yards instead of 7 yards. And we're going to take you through this route until you get it right. And I think that's going to be something that's important for a young roster, particularly young players who have struggled with some of the precision elements like that before. So I think that will be intriguing to see going forward. And another guy that I spent a good bit of time with, and I think he's soft-spoken. He's not a guy who's going to win the room a lot. And I think he's probably one of the most important guys on this staff is Rob Moore, the receivers coach. He's a guy who, to be frank, didn't get retained with the Raiders. He was let go after 3 years as the Raiders receivers coach. And he's a guy who was hired here. He's a veteran guy who's been in the NFL, coached NFL receiver for 6 years, coached in college for a while too. But he's got a big responsibility in teaching a guy like Corey Davis, teaching a guy like Taywan Taylor, teaching a guy like Tajay Sharp, a guy like Rashard Matthews, and taking them to the next level. Because as you guys know, as Titans fans, the receivers have been an issue for a long time. It's often been a question on when can we get the receivers to take that next step. And I think Corey Davis will be one of the biggest storylines and question marks around the Titans as we get into the 2018 season. Which Corey Davis will we see in 18? Will we see the guy in that final playoff game against the Patriots who caught 2 touchdowns and we're like, whoa, this guy can be a number 1 receiver? Or will we see a guy that we saw most of the regular season who was, dealing with injuries and maybe struggled with some of his route precision and maybe struggled with aggressiveness in getting off press coverage and coming back to the football? That was a guy that was still learning on the fly, and that was a guy who didn't get a lot of offseason time. So I think this offseason will be particularly important. The 2 most important guys this offseason, in my opinion, is 1, Marcus Mariota, and 2, Corey Davis. And, Pat O'Hara and Matt LaFleur will have a lot of hands-on Marcus Mariota, and they will try to probably rework some of his mechanics and probably try to get him to a level where he is more proficient as a passer, and also get him into areas where he's comfortable in the scheme. And then as far as receivers, Rob Moore will be the guy that's with Corey Davis and talking to him and trying to get him more precise with what he's doing as a receiver to take him to that next level, because the Titans didn't draft him number 5 overall for him to be sort of a number 2 or number 3 receiver. They believe that he can be their number 1 elite receiver, a guy who can, get you 1,000, 1,200 yards a year and 10 touchdowns. If he's going to be that guy, he's got to take a big step in 2018 because he wasn't that guy this past year. So I think those are the two areas that I have a lot of eyes on this offseason. And I think it'll be fun to watch how those guys develop with whoever new they bring in as well. So those are my early thoughts about, those coaching staff additions. I think as we get closer to the NFL Combine, that's the next big picture meeting of these guys. I think we'll be able to get a gauge of what this 2018 Titans team would look like and what Mike Vrabel's type guys are. I think we know that he focuses on tough players, smart players, but I think you'll hear a lot more about versatility and hybrid players and players who are not necessarily testing off the chart, but perform based on instincts. Guys who, are making plays based on natural football ability. And I think the biggest football cliche, and I laugh about it all the time, is that calling a guy a football guy. Oh man, he's a football guy. You hear it all the time, and you're like, what does that really mean? In a sense, because they're all football guys, but what the analogy is basically saying it's a guy who epitomizes the game more than the numbers sort of tell. He's a guy that you want on 3rd and 2 when you need to stop. And, he may be a linebacker that runs a 4.9 and can only bench 225 pounds 16 times, but you know when you need to stop, he's going to come up clutch. That's a football player. So I think you'll see the Titans target a lot more of those type of guys that may not be impressive at the combine or may not be impressive with their timing, but they can play ball. So I also think you'll see a lot more of creativity as far as the type of players you bring in here. I think you'll see a lot more acceptance of the college way of life. You'll see guys who may be successful on the college level brought in here and attempted to gel into this level. I talked to running backs coach Tony Dews, who is a longtime college coach, and he's one of, I think, 3 or 4 guys on this staff that were hired and haven't coached in the NFL before. And some people will look at that as a negative, like, oh man, these guys haven't coached in the NFL, it's going to be a transition. And that could be true, but I also look at it as these guys are guys who have new ideas and innovation, and they're willing to do stuff outside of the norm. And I think you're coming from a staff under Mike Mularkey and Dick LeBeau and Terry Rubisky, where all of these guys are 60 plus with 20, 30 years of coaching experience. And you're going to another staff that's a lot younger, a lot more innovative, and a lot more green as far as their knowledge of the NFL and their how strict they are to what we do. And you hear that all the time. That was one of Mike Mularkey's and Terry Rubisky's one of their things that say, this is what we do. This is who we are. And I think you'll hear a lot less of that this year, of this is who we are, and sort of we adjust to who we are based on who our players are. So I think that's one element that I'm intrigued to see. How important is coaching experience, and does the innovation portion of the new coaching staff become more of an important factor than their lack of coaching experience? So that's sort of my take and my opinion on it. I'm gonna go ahead and run out of here in a little bit. I got a couple other things to write, and my story on Mike Vrabel, on Dean Pease should be showing up as well. So I'll share that with you guys. I'll take a couple more questions, a few more, and then I'll head out of here. As always, guys, scroll through the top through this video. It'll be up to display after I'm done. You can kind of read or watch through all of the answers I gave. If I missed your question, I'm sorry. I'll try to get to it next time. But I think I got to most of everybody's question. And if I answer something earlier that you guys talked about, just kind of shuffle it through and I'll probably hit it. So I'll answer a few more. Share this video, which if you guys want. I'll continue to do these in the off season based on what's going on with the Titans and whether there's a need to do some of these. It won't be every week, but I'll probably do one of these around combine time, probably do a bunch of these around draft time, and try to give you guys a little bit of my thought process of what's going on with this team as they go into a really important 2018 season. I think one thing you'll hear from me in my coverage throughout the year is that I don't think that a transition year is acceptable for this team. General Manager John Robinson made a bold move in firing a coach after a playoff win. So, you bring in a new coach, and typically people say, hey, he gets a year or two to adjust. And I think this team should be a playoff team in 2018, even with the tougher schedule, even with a tougher division. I don't really see a reason why this team shouldn't be better, or at least as good as they were last season, given the talent, given the youth of this team. So that's just my take, and I'm gonna hold them to that expectations with how I write. So that's sort of what I'm thinking. I'll answer a few more of you guys' questions, and I will get out of here. Corey, based upon the 2017 season, how do you feel about Dye going forward with the new staff? Do you think adding more versatility to formations will be what he needs to be more productive? Long question. Kevin Dye, how do I want to say this? I don't think the Titans can depend on Kevin Dye. I look at it. I look at it as if Kevin Dye becomes a player in his 3rd season, then that's a bonus. If I were the Titans, and a lot smarter guys in that front office than me, as far as football smart. But if I was the Titans front office brass or a GM, I would go into the 2018 season expecting that Kevin Dye does not make my team or does not make an impact on my team. You haven't seen anything from him in his 2 years here. He's a guy who had injuries his first year. Last year, he was non-existent. He basically was taking up a roster spot. I didn't see anything out of him. This is an important year for him, but I don't think the Titans can count on him being a key portion of your team, or else you take a risk of losing a valuable chance to go get a key resource as far as an edge rusher. They're going to be a 3-4 scheme again, so he's going to be in a similar role unless they bulk him up and put him as a 3-4 defensive end. I just don't see that. I think the Titans go out there and they make outside linebacker a priority via the draft or via free agency. I think that should be arguably their biggest need. And you say that we've got a guy like Derek Morgan and Brian Arakpo and Eric Walden, who are all late 20s, early 30s. These are all guys who are probably going to see their skills decline. Who's going to be your next level pass rusher that's going to be here for the Titans for a long time? And I don't really see one. So I think that they need to get one or two other pass rushers to come in and be a guy to watch going forward. And I don't think Kevin Dodd's a part of that picture right now. So do you see a lot more RPOs under Matt? I do. I do see a lot more RPOs. I see a lot more spread formations. I see a lot more pocket movement. I talked to the offensive line coach, and he said he plans to run a zone scheme. So I think you'll see a lot more zone running. And a lot of the Kubiak system was predicated on zone running. So I think you'll see a lot of that. And I think you'll see an acceptance of college schemes. So you'll see more of an opened up offense. I think the thing about the RPO, I think we sort of overuse it because it's sort of like a new phenomenon. Everybody's like, RPO. A lot of things that people call RPOs aren't really RPOs. And this isn't the right time for me to describe what it is and isn't an RPO. But it's not used as prevalent as you guys may think. But RPOs aren't necessarily a new phenomenon. It's just becoming more mainstream because there's been a lot of success with it. And I think you'll see some of that, but I don't think it's going to become their main cog of their offense. I think you're still going to run your two tight end sets. I think you're still going to run ISO. I think you're still going to run a lot of the things that you do on offense. But yeah, you'll sprinkle in some pocket movement. You'll sprinkle in some RPOs. You'll sprinkle in some three wide situations where you're bunched on the outside or bunched in the inside, or you have a lot of different stacks and formations. I think that's going to be some of the bigger elements, and trying to find ways to get receivers open, wide open. Guys, you could scheme receivers open rather than depending on receivers to get open themselves. I think that's something you'll see a lot in the new offense. So Nicholas, first round running back, if we part ways with Murray, I would be kind of surprised by that just because Derrick Henry's already here, and I think he'll have a big role on this offense, even if he isn't the no doubt lead back. And I think that's a possibility that he isn't the no doubt lead back. But a first round running back, when you already have a guy who's performed, I just the best use of resources, unless a guy, for some reason, like a guy like a Saquon Barkley is still there. I don't know why he would be. Maybe if he gets busted for pot or something in the combine, he drops or something. Maybe that's something where you get a luxury pick. But other than that, I think my prediction in February is the Titans go defense with their first round pick. But we got to see what they do in free agency. And last one, Sean, do you see John Robinson going for more speed guys, for more success in screen and RPOs and slants over the middle? Yeah, I think adding speed to the offense should be a priority, and I think it will be, whether that's running backs or receivers or both. I think we'll see at least one or two solid speed guys added. To be frank, the Titans were slow with offense this past season, and that's part of the reason they were boring. It's not necessarily not all because of Mike Mularkey's schemes. Honestly, these guys aren't that fast. There's not a lot of fast guys on this offense. If you're not having a lot of speed on offense, it's not going to be that exciting. So I think you'll see more speed from multiple positions, and I think that'll help them as they transition to this new scheme. Thanks, guys. We'll be talking in the future. As always, check out my work on ESPN, on Twitter at Cameron Wolfe, and when I do these Howling with the Wolf sessions. So share it, rewatch it, and we'll chat soon.